15 years ago, I was recklessly doing all these things and I wasn't focused. What's the lesson? Focus, narrow focus, pour yourself into that thing, get stronger, get better. Don't just chase everything because it seems like it'll make money.
All right. Welcome, everybody. We've got an exciting guest today who has a business in the new construction space, and he's really focusing on solving a lot of problems that would help me in my business. Before we get into that, Mason, what's going on back in Colorado?
Oh, man. Business is, kind of in this steady state. I feel like there was a huge pickup at the beginning of the year. We're recording this intro February 20th of 2025. A little bit of a slowdown with kind of the news of tariffs and building costs and building materials and everything. And it feels like it's picking back up, at least is kind of what I'm experiencing. But I feel like this is a timely episode with, all of the concerns about construction costs and the fact that next week you and I are going to be at the International Builders Show in Las Vegas, meeting with a lot of people and getting to see what's happening in the home building space. But today we have Damion Lupo on the show, who is a seasoned entrepreneur who has launched and grown over 70 companies from $0 to $100 million throughout a remarkable 25-year journey. In addition to being a prolific author with 12 published books, Damion is celebrated for his extraordinary achievements in building multiple companies from the ground up, many of which have reached 7, 8, and even 9-figure valuations. Despite a significant setback that saw him lose a $20 million portfolio at the age of 30, Damion's resilience and determination led him to not only overcome homelessness, but also rebuild his wealth beyond 9 figures today. This episode really focuses on how he scaled huge, shrunk down, and really narrowed and focused his scope on efficient building materials in the construction world. So without further ado, let's bring Damion in. Damion, how's it going today?
Mason, Dan, good to see you guys. It's going really freaking good.
That's what we like to hear. And that's what the general sentiment for a lot of people have been kind of at the start of the new year. But before we dive into what you have going on in your day-to-day and all your businesses, Damion, can you tell the audience, a 2 to 3 minute spiel about yourself?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, when you get to know me, you know that I'm a guy that looks around and sees problems and then my brain starts going into solutions. It's how over the last 25, 30 years, I've launched 70 plus companies, made millions, lost it, been homeless. Like there's this crazy cycle of all the things I've done, been thrown out of school because I put a bookstore on campus out of business, made millions in real estate, ended up blowing up in 2008. Like I've had all these experiences. And the beauty of that is every one of these things was a stair step towards building a unicorn, which is what I get to be a part of today. And that's the secret sauce, if you will. It's being willing to go out there and know that a lot of what you do isn't for the win, it's for the learn. And that's what's happened over the last 3 decades.
Awesome. So I think something that I struggle with, Dan struggles with, and so many people that are business owners struggle with is there's unlimited information out on the internet and unlimited books available that teach you what to do, what not to do. And for some reason, we all have the tendency to make a lot of the same mistakes, even though we know or theoretically should know that we, hey, let's learn from Damion or Mason or Dan to not make those mistakes, but yet people constantly do. Do you feel like that's something that an entrepreneur has to go through? Do you think they have to kind of hit rock bottom or really struggle in order to succeed? Or is success something that is possible without, torture and pain?
I think torture and pain is a prerequisite for success and fulfillment. You can have success and hit the lottery, but you're not going to be fulfilled and you're probably not going to have lasting success. I remember 25 plus, just about 25 years ago, it was actually 25 years ago in January, February of 2000, I had a conversation with a guy at a conference. My first conference, I went there and bought every tape that they had, listened to everybody, and I said, I'm going to do this. I came home with an extra suitcase full of tapes. And I'm talking tapes, not like digital assets, but tapes that take up a lot of space. And he said, when I asked him if he would loan me money, because I was buying 5 to 10 houses a month, which is what we all said when we were out there in that space. I'd bought one house, but I was doing 5 to 10 a month because, you got to project success. And I said, so I'd love to borrow money and do some stuff with you. And he said, great. How many times have you gone bankrupt so far? And I said, what? He goes, after you've gone bankrupt a couple of times, reach out to me. And I thought, what an a-hole. And then after I lost all my money and bankrupted myself several times, I was like, oh, because you learn these things. So back to your question, do you have to go through these things? Yeah, you got to have a form of it. And nobody wants to do it. Just like you don't go into a fight saying, I can't wait to get hit in the face. But eventually you go, this is part of the process. And if I'm not making $1 billion or whatever on this thing, there's a huge $1 billion lesson that I'm getting. And you detach from the success and you go, this is going to be something important for me. And it may be money and it may not be. That's the big shift. In the beginning, I was like, I need to figure out how to make money and I don't want to do the pain. And then I got really used to the pain and it stopped hurting.
Yeah, I think that's a good way to put it. You got used to the pain, so it stopped hurting, because it doesn't get any easier. It's funny. I was talking to my sister the other day just about business and everything that's going on, and she says, wow, that's a lot of things going wrong. And I'm like, yeah, that's just what it's like every day, all day, is there's problems all day, and you just get used to it eventually. So I can certainly relate to that. Now, Damion, you mentioned you started quite a few different companies, had your ups and downs, but Frametec, I think, is what we're really going to make as the focus of this conversation. But can you give us a little bit of your background specifically on real estate? You mentioned buying a bunch of houses. What did that journey look like that got you to the point of starting Frametec?
So it's funny because when we look backwards, everything is very clear. And when you look forwards, you're like, I have a vision. And then you take this very squiggly caffeinated line that goes all over the place, like literally a caffeinated spider creating a web. It makes no sense. But looking backwards, you're like, oh, I got it. So in the beginning, I went out and started buying these houses, bought 150 houses in about 5 years and made a bunch of money. Was not thinking about anything really beyond that. Made the money, thought I was a superhero and invincible. And then took that money and rolled it into other things, developments in Birmingham and Memphis and Maine. And I ended up losing everything. Took a $20 million portfolio, turned it into -5. So I lost $25 million in 12 months, was homeless, and it sucked. And from there, the way that led into Frametec was it forced me to ask, what am I actually doing and why? And am I going to do the same thing better for more money, or am I going to do something for more meaning? And so when I launched the company that was the precursor to Frametec, it's called the EQRP company, and it was helping people get control of their retirement money so they could actually choose a life by design and pick things like real estate for their 401k and IRAs. And that evolved into a community with several thousand people. And they kept saying, this is awesome. Love the community, love the relationships, but I need to figure out where to put my money. So 5 years ago, my partner and I said, well, let's create some of those opportunities. And we ended up doing that and did a few that were okay. And then ultimately that led into Frametec 3 years ago with some guys that came and said, we have an idea to solve the housing crisis. We just need $40 million. And we said, really like the idea. And we really like you guys. And so we're going to bet on you. And so we brought our money and our investors together and we funded this thing and we started producing a few months ago. And we are truly solving the housing crisis.
Okay, so I'm excited to get into that. I'm in new construction, and that's kind of how I learned about real estate. But I really want to hit on what you said, or dive into what you said. You had success, bought 150 houses, and moved into development and went broke. And I'm an optimist, so I'd like to think someone out there can hear this, learn from your mistakes, and not have to make them themselves. So can you tell us what went wrong? Was it simply the crash of '08? Was it something about development or something you did wrong that you had done very well? What went wrong, and what specifically were you doing that failed?
I'll tell you what I said in 2009. I said, man, it was Obama, it was the Fed chairman, it was the economy. And what I said in 2012, after I'd spent a few years drilling into myself, it was Damion. Damion was the problem. A lot of people made a lot of money from 2009 to 2012, and it wasn't Damion. Damion was over there playing poor me until he realized, okay, it's actually, I'm the one that did all this. And it doesn't mean outside influences happen. Like nobody controls a hurricane, but you decide how you interpret it. And when it blows your house down and you don't have insurance, or in LA, your house burns down and you don't have enough insurance, you ask yourself, what was this about? And it was about me making the choice to set myself up in this position with not enough insurance. And so we make these choices. And so I literally went through that process and finally got the lesson there that I own my life. And that was a huge shift. And it was one of the biggest lessons was I was a scatterbrained, greedy bastard. Like I was out there saying, I'm going to develop 7 different things in different states, no deep experience with any of these. and everything is easy. It's like all the syndicators putting together deals, and they've never done it before. Yeah. And it's in a different state, and they say, oh, I got a management company. I've met them one time over Zoom and we're good. Give me your money. Like, I just look at that as reckless. And I was that guy. 15 years ago, I was recklessly doing all these things and I wasn't focused. What's the lesson? Focus, narrow focus, pour yourself into that thing, get stronger, get better. Don't just chase everything because it seems like it'll make money.
Yeah. Okay. That makes sense. And it's something that I think we've all, or anyone with a good amount of experience, has made the mistake. You do well, you start throwing money at different projects at different places, and you don't know what you don't know and you get burned. So that makes sense. Mason, you want to take it?
Yeah. So let's jump into Frametec. I'm poking around the website. It seems interesting. I think, with Dan and I being in the land space and Dan having done a lot of new construction, one of the top hot topics on everyone's mind is how to solve the housing crisis, which is, there's a lot of problems. There's an affordability problem related to materials and labor. There's a lot of regulation problem related to the soft costs of development. Tell us about Frametec, and at a high level, tell us how it's going to assist in solving the housing crisis. And then we're going to really drill down into what the company's doing.
Sure. So to take a step back, why do we have a housing crisis? You touched on a little bit of that with regulations. It's really hard to get things done, and the government's not making it easier in places. Unfortunately, like California, it's really hard to get things done. And where I live in Sedona right now, it's hard because we don't want to grow. And if we do, we're going to make it so expensive and so painful and so slow. So what Frametec has done is said, we've got to innovate, not incrementally, but exponentially. And what does that mean? In the supply chain, framing is the big slow thing. It's like the unpredictable. When we get a framed house, we can do all the other things, but it's expensive, it's slow, and it's not precise. Like, if you look at a house that's been framed, you're like, oh man, this is ugly. But then they cover it up with a bunch of drywall and stuff, and they kind of hide the errors. And what these guys came up with was an idea to build all the components, like the walls and the floors, and do it inside of a manufacturing plant. And that way you have precision. So you've got precision to make things 10 times better quality. And because you're using automation, robotics, AI, you're able to do things 4 times faster. And here's the crazy thing that makes everybody that loves the environment, which is truly everybody's in the environment, unless nobody wants to choke on smoke. But when you think about a house or an apartment, what do you guys always think about? We think about dumpsters full of wood, and there's just massive amounts of waste. We have a patented process where that wood is actually finger jointed together. So we have virtually no waste, like 99% less waste, which is just sawdust. So all those cuts that you see in full of, the dumpsters are full of stuff. We've removed that, and we're the only ones in the world that have done this process. And what that does is it speeds up the process, provides more supply. And when you think about the housing crisis, there's not enough supply and the housing costs are too much. Well, if you provide more supply, that's helpful. And it also pushes prices down. So faster, more, less expensive. Everybody wins here except the legacy systems, which is why Frametec is being looked at as this great solution and scaring the shit out of everybody that's in the industry, because they're saying, oh man, we haven't innovated. We better do something.
So I love that. I love manufacturing. Have Lean Six Sigma black belt, if you're familiar, with, Toyota really created it. And I love Toyota despite my Tundra breaking down today about 2 hours ago. So it's been a frustrating day for me, all that to say. But what people make an assumption of pretty often in the new construction and housing spaces that manufactured homes are cheaper than stick-built houses. And, at the end of the day, it's not really true. Like, usually like the same quality manufactured home and the same quality stick-built home are going to end up costing, give or take, right about the same. The thing is, the convenience typically of manufactured homes. But what happens often is there's delays and damages in the delivery process. So while on the manufacturing and in the factory side, things can be really great, but with the delivery and implementation of it, what is Frametec doing to make sure that it's not like, hey, we can create this beautiful, amazing, efficient, environmentally friendly product, and then once we ship it to the house, like, it's still good and it's still great?
So I'm going to help everybody, because this happens almost every time when people hear about what we're doing, because there's an immediate association. People watching, listening are thinking, oh yeah, manufactured housing, and I'm not a big fan. Like, there's some cool stuff. that what we're doing is not manufactured housing. It's the manufacturing of the wood panels and the actual bones. All we do is the bones. We're a framer. So what we're doing is you give us plans as a builder. We take those plans, we convert them into our CAD system, and then we go build all the bones. And not only do we build the frames, the walls, the floors, the trusses for the roofs, we set them up for success for your plumbers and your electricians. We're drilling all the holes so they're lined up. We're snapping lines on the wall for the plates. We're actually drawing on the slab so that everybody knows where everything goes, including fans and where there's QR codes using our Dusty robotics system. So people know what kind of appliances are going where in multiple languages. We're doing all this stuff. Our team brings these pieces, these bones, just the wood, out to the site. We put it together, and as a builder, on February 12th, you're going to have a house ready for your plumbers and electricians. So on February 13th, you can do the rest. We can build any house. We build apartments. It's not like one of 5 manufactured houses. So what we're doing is we're giving everybody a 10x better quality product in the framing space and setting up all the subs for a faster, more efficient delivery of what they're doing. Massive predictability, cheaper cost, because you think about it, if we can save 75% of the time is money. And so everybody's winning here because of the innovation, because of the ingenuity of the people that came up with this system. So this is how 92% of the housing is built. It's stick framed. And what we're doing is we're making the stick framing part of it 1,000 times better when you add in all of the benefits together. So it's a total disruption of the entire industry.
Okay, so that's really interesting. So yeah, I'm doing a couple spec homes right now, and it should be breaking ground in the next week or two. The financing has been the delay there, but the idea then would be I would have sent you our plans, and you all would take that and prepare the product, prepare the wood, and so the day that we've finished with the foundation and all of that's ready, then you all would show up, assuming we planned accordingly, with the product, put it in place, and then the subs could come and do their rough-ins right after.
Yeah. So you're going to say, okay, on this date, the slab is going to be ready. We're going to bring our robot, looks like a Roomba, and it's going to go draw everything on there. Meanwhile, at the plant, we build 12 houses a day. That's what the capacity is. And so we're going to literally show up on a day. It's going to take us a day to a day and a half to put your house up. And this is assuming, let's talk about like a 2,000 square foot house. Take a couple days to put that up, and you can literally line everybody right on top of that. So you don't have weather elements hurting your wood. You don't have wood walking off the site because of theft. All the things that cost a lot of money and a lot of pain, we've removed those out of the equation. So as a builder, Frametec is the option that you want as a builder. There's no other option that comes even remotely close. And right now it's the same price. So why in the world would anybody want to do something else? They don't.
How does the functional Roomba do the drawings if it's not a slab?
It doesn't. It's a slab-based system.
Okay, got it. Okay, interesting. All right, so it looks like you all are in Texas and Arizona as of now. What projects or where are you actively producing and installing these currently in those states?
So in Arizona, we have our first manufacturing plant. Took about 2.5 years to get online from the time it was a napkin 3 years ago, 2.5 years. And then we've been producing the last 3 months. And then our second location in Arizona is underway, under construction. And then Texas and the rest of the country. If you look at our site, you'll see a map where our targeted locations, this is truly coast to coast. And we're going to ultimately we've got some partners that have reached out and want to license our technology and be a partner in that they want to run these things. And the more people that see this, which everybody at this point is seeing it, the more impact we can have on the market. We know how many we can build a year and how many we can bring online. And at this point, it's a proven model. So it's a franchise. Basically, people stamp it just like a McDonald's. It'll work. Not arguing for the benefit of McDonald's, but I'm saying it does work. The model works. And so the same thing here. It works, and people can say, okay, it's been proven. Now we want them in this market, and this market, and this market. And obviously Texas is the big market. It's the biggest market, biggest, most pro-business environment. So that's where we're going pretty heavy into.
So going back to what we were talking about of the housing crisis and what's led to it is a lot of the government regulations that are in place with development, specifically at all of the individual local levels, where I feel like, I just wrote an article on this where President Trump has promised a lot of deregulation related to development, and a lot of people are really excited about that. But unfortunately, it's the cities and counties that are regulating so much of development, where there's, hundreds and if not thousands of different building codes associated with every single development in the country, which makes it super difficult. How do you guys make sure that where you're doing business, whether or at the local level, that you're going to be in compliance with all the codes associated with it? Or is it more so on the contractors and builders that you're working with?
Well, we set everybody up for our standards are higher than anything that's out there in terms of regulations or codes. Like, so when we go in and the compliance, the code officers come out and they're looking, the inspectors are looking, it only takes them one, maybe two houses. And they're like, you guys, I can do a drive-by inspection because your stuff is the same, precise every single time. And that's what happened when we were building our plant. It got to the point where they just drove by and said, yep, give us a thumbs up. And that was it. And that's what you want to do, build the relationship of trust. And then you're really not running into it. One of the big things that we're doing is we're building these plants in more secondary or tertiary environments, because in those environments, you don't have the jobs. You don't have the manufacturing jobs. Most jobs that are tier one, that are the base layer of the economy, are in urban environments. Urban environments are a hell of a lot harder to get things done. When you go into it, like our first plant in Camp Verde here in Arizona, the mayor, everybody that's there, the politicians are like, whatever you guys need, we love it. You're bringing in these core hundreds of jobs that are going to ripple into 1,000+ jobs. These are good paying manufacturing jobs. I mean, we're doing things that every community would want. We've got childcare that's going into our facility for people so they don't have to be killed by the cost of childcare. We've got a wellness center. We've got a cafeteria, doctors on site to take care of our people and the families. We're the model for what manufacturing and truly business should be and can be in the country. So these rural areas that are losing jobs, or people want to be there, but they can't, that's where we're targeting. And so there's this massive alignment, and we don't have the friction. You try to go into Phoenix, urban center, you're going to have a lot more friction and pushback. So it's a great opportunity for these rural communities, because we come in and then we serve a 200-mile radius, and they get all these jobs and people that want to be more rural, like the heart of America, instead of just urban. And so it's a pretty cool win for a lot of people in these communities.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think you hit on a really important point here, where manufacturing is really great, but it's still a people-intensive business to be able to get the product done. And if you don't create a great culture and have a great work environment, nothing gets done, which is why so many manufacturing plants have such huge difficulties just staying staffed. And whenever you have a big run of, if your goal is 3,000+ homes and you have to do a huge run, and it's like, okay, well, we need to start doing, morning, day shift and night shift, and, potentially running on 6 days in a row, your people better really love and respect you to be able to get the job done. So your role with the company, as I understand it, is Chief Investment Officer. I'd love to pivot a little bit to what it's like building a business like this, beyond the product side of thing. The product makes sense. It creates efficiency. It reduces waste, all the stuff that I love, with Lean and Six Sigma and manufacturing. But in order to build a business like this, where is it going, on the actual valuation side and creating like an actual company? Because so many entrepreneurs, they don't build businesses to sell, or, would have impossible time valuating their companies. Where do you see it going? And then what's that next step to get there? And, feel free to talk about the structure, the management, kind of everything related to that.
So there's a great series of books. One of them is from your neck of the woods in Boulder. Jim Collins wrote a number of books, Built to Last or Built to Sell, but Built to Last. Now I'm going to mix them up. Good to Great, and was it Built to Last?
Good to Great and Build to Last. I think you're right.
And I think there's another book called Built to Sell. Right? And maybe I'm making that up. Maybe I should write that book. It'll be my 13th book. But when you go and build a business and you do it with the intention of selling it, you have to build it differently. You have to put structures and you have to put an A team in place. Otherwise, you're going to get a crappy multiple. And it's like a dentist that has, a couple of hygienists and they have themselves, and then they think they're going to sell it. And they basically get maybe 1 times their revenue, maybe. And they go, well, how come this didn't work out? How come I'm not getting 4 or 5x? And it's because you didn't scale it so it was actually appealing to people where they couldn't wait to buy it. You're having to sell it versus having people clamor to buy. So when we thought about this, we said, okay, how can we do something that's going to solve a big problem and create massive value So the way that you do that, first off, is you have to have a pretty damn good idea, and then you get the best team in the world. Because you can have a great idea. If you have a B team, your thing is screwed. I mean, truly, like you might bumble into a little bit of profit, but you want the big, great companies. They've got great leaders and great teams. So we structured this so that everybody would win, and it was a fair deal for the investors. The investors end up making 4 to 8 times their money in the process, and they can see how this wins, whether we hold it for 10 years or whether we sell it after 5. They can see how they're going to make tons of cash flow, how it's going to be super profitable. We're anti-fragile, meaning if we have a recession or a depression and more apartments are built and we end up doing that instead of houses, our net income is up 53% because of efficiencies. So people go, what if there's a depression? I'm like, we are wickedly more profitable. And they go, oh, dang, that's not usual. I'm like, no, it's because we're anti-fragile. So we've got this structure set up, and the biggest risk in something like this is that the idea doesn't actually work. And there were examples of companies that attempted to do something similar in this field, multi-billion-dollar investments that flattened, died in recent years. So people remember those and they go, ooh, I heard of Katera. And you guys, are you doing a Katera move? And we're like, no, because we don't have a bunch of tech heads with about too much money thinking that they know how to build houses. We have people that have been bleeding sawdust for the last 25 years, and in some cases, 50 years since the 70s. So you have operators with execution intelligence. Those guys are the ones that came in. It wasn't somebody that said, I have an idea, I'm going to go find somebody. It was the guys that said, we're going to operate and build this. And what we need is we need the fuel. And when I looked at this, I said, you know what? I trust your execution ability, and the investors that I'm going to bring in with me to be a part of this, they're going to trust that too. And it happened. There's a book. I actually remember the title of this, and you guys have probably heard it, The Speed of Trust by Covey. When you have deep relationships with deep trust, everything is fast and scary easy. But if you don't have the relationships, you can say, oh, people trust me. I'm like, well, how deep is your relationship? You know it's deep if somebody says, here's 100,000, or in some cases $1 million or $2 million, and they just write it to you and they're like, you have a napkin, but I believe in you. And they write that money. That's deep trust. If somebody says, I love you, I trust you, but I'm not giving you a nickel, I don't know how much they trust you. That's just love money that they're not going to give you. So that's how we set it up. We thought about it, structured it so that everybody understood there was a dual path to them winning, and the communities won, the environment wins. Everybody's winning in this thing, and that made people feel really good. And it wasn't just a donation to a feel-good ESG type of thing. It was everybody's winning here, and your capital is not only protected by people that know how to take care of it, but the principals have millions and millions of their own dollars aligned with you, and you can see how your money is going to be grown in a massive way, because it's not a 5 or 10%. I mean, people are going to be likely making 30 to 40%. And how do we know that's true? Because you can see what something like this is valued at in the public markets. And right now we're on the edge of $1 billion valuation in 3 years. That doesn't happen because you just guess. You literally model it like we talked about in the beginning. You look at what's worked in the past, and then you back in, what do we need? And you put all these pieces. I wrote a book called Unicornomics about 6 years ago, and it was how do you build a unicorn? And it was the foundational 15% upfront that gives you an 85% likelihood of success. That's based on principles from Bucky Fuller and my experience. And it really is a playbook. If you use those principles, you can turn anything into something massive. But if you don't use principles, you're going to wonder why your life is so hard. It's because you're fighting the universe in a lot of ways. And I did that for a long time, so I know what that's like. This is going with the universe, using it to support you, and then bringing in the right people around you so that you're all rowing in the same direction.
Interesting. Okay. It's fun to talk through this with you, being in the industry. And so sitting here looking at the website, reading through everything, one thing we haven't talked about is the contractor side of things. So, you find municipalities that are okay with the product, they're on board. How has it been getting contractors to actually use you? I mean, I work, in smaller towns, and there's definitely a rigidity there, a fear of change. So tell us a little bit about that. Do you have a few big partners that do a lot of builds, or do you work with a lot of small mom and pop contractors, or who's ultimately buying the product?
So in the beginning, everybody is nervous because something new, because we're using finger jointed wood. So the first question is this as strong as a board? Because if you have a board that's in a truss and it's got a finger joint, which means two ends are stuck together, question is that going to sustain shear and everything else? And what's funny is we've got a world-class testing facility. And I mean, our testing facility is better than the third-party ones. It's more sophisticated. our joints are stronger than the wood. When we do testing and try to break our boards, they break outside of the joint stays intact. So when people see this and they see hundreds and then thousands of tests and they're like, oh, damn, your stuff is actually better quality. And so it's pretty fast where people say, okay, that sounds good. What does it look like? We've had 3 of the biggest builders in the area in central Arizona come out and see the houses that we put up. They walk up, they're clean, there's no debris. And they look at it and they go, this looks like furniture. This doesn't look like a framed house. And so and what was crazy is we had one that was built traditionally, if you will, site built, and then we had ours right next to it, and they were both still in framed state. And you can look at the two and you see the waviness and the truss plates that are all weird. And our stuff is, the quality control is so next level. It's Six Sigma, it's lean, it's Toyota standard. And people looked at that. And so we had builders come to us and say, hey, we were going to do 80 houses in 2025. Because of you guys, we're planning on 400 to 500 because they saw it. So we've proven what we're doing and how much better it is. And it's not even a comparison. So people are rigid, but ultimately what they want is they want the best quality product. And if you can give them the best quality product and it's actually the same price and it's faster, there isn't any hesitation. The only question is how much can you produce? So we have way more demand at this point than we even have the ability to produce.
Interesting. Okay. Yeah, that would be awesome. If there's no waste, no leftovers beyond just sawdust. One other tactical question that I couldn't help but wonder, looking through the website, I see you're planning to get into, well, really looks like the whole country, but I see Florida and the Gulf of America. Of course, the whole brand is Frametec, is based around wood. Do you all have any plans in the future to do anything with concrete block for some of those, Southwest Florida, some of those coastal communities?
So ultimately what Frametec will represent is innovation and future thinking. So it's places where, there's a lot of the world doesn't use wood. They use other things, concrete, and like Florida, you've got different structural integrity requirements because of the freaking hurricanes. And we don't worry about that so much in Arizona. In California, apparently you have hurricanes, tornadoes, fires, floods. You got the whole gamut of chaos. But what we're going to see, what you'll see with Frametec is an innovation center, and it'll be where we're forward, the future thinking about all these. How do we make this better? How do we innovate? And bringing people that are thinking that way into that ecosystem. So we're finding solutions to have a better quality concrete product. So it's not just making a bunch of money and providing housing. It's thinking about how do we make plumbing more efficient? How do we make it smarter? How do we do electricians? How do we give them a better path and reimagine how they're doing it? Because most trades have literally been doing the same thing for decades. They're like, hey, we're making money. They keep going. So you're going to see us spending a lot of time on R&D, and it's cool. Like it actually creates the culture that we have for our people is already awesome. They know they're at the edge, the forefront of this. And then when you start building in the technology and using AI to help you think through things better and faster and more dynamically, that culture is world changing, world class. And it's a hell of a lot of fun for everybody to be there. So nobody ever wants to leave, and you have the best and the brightest who all want to join it.
That's awesome.
Cool.
Yeah. And I love how much you focused on the people component of it, just because that's the only way to really accomplish it. But Damion, you've had, success, failure, success, kind of throughout your career and investing journey. And you, I know, have poured a lot of time, effort, and money into this company. When do you personally feel like you're ready to stop or retire or, kind of stop moving forward on your own personal investing journey?
I think the moment you stop, so it's funny, I talk about retirement a lot. And over the years, I've said when you retire, you're basically dead in 3 years or less. Statistically, that's what happens if you look at the Social Security data. And I think that there's a pivot. So I wrote a 10-page book, takes 10 minutes to read. It's how do you make $10 million in 10 years? Oh, a lot of tens there. I'm kind of an exponential guy. And the website is turnkeyretirement.com. It is not the formula so that you can go sit on a beach and, hang out with pina coladas. It's to give you the opportunity to take money out of the equation so that you're doing things that are meaningful. It doesn't mean you're driving and working and you die at your desk. It gives you that choice of what you want to do with your time. And so I wake up usually between 2 and 3 o'clock in the morning, and I can't wait to do my thing. So what would I do differently? There are things that I would do differently. And life does change when you're sitting there and you've got 100 or 200 or 500 million bucks in the bank. Like you think about things differently. You don't look at things going, man, I got to figure out, like, if you don't get paid for the next 5 years, you don't care. It's like, it's not a thought. Most people, it is a thought. So you make decisions different. You might love a project, but if you got to figure out how you're going to not starve to death, you get derailed. And so how do what am I thinking about in terms of retirement? I'm not. I'm thinking about how things will evolve in the different seasons. I'm thinking about how Frametech can have this big benefit on society and how we can continue to innovate and bring more people in. And so I'm very optimistic. Like, I learned a while back that I was too optimistic and I didn't have all the thinking. There's a book called Thinking for a Change. I was like, wait, I don't have any pessimistic or rational or pragmatic thinking. I just had optimism, and it was brutal when I wasn't looking at the train that was coming down. I'm like, oh, it'll turn. It's on. I'm on the track. And I'm like, oh, the train will be fine. I'll be fine. And then I got run over by the train. I was like, wait a second. I need to be a little pessimistic that I'm on the wrong track with the train coming at me. So I've got all those things in play, and there's a natural evolution. If you're present enough to understand how to think differently, then you don't just end up working yourself to death, because at the end you're dead. And then if you have a bunch of money, then, what was the purpose? Maybe you made a dent, but I think there's a lot more to life that you can incorporate the work, the meaningful work, not just I'm going to work for money and then spend the money and work more because I need more shit. Like, there's a different approach. And that's the evolution. My approach was Ferraris and mansions and jets. That was my approach 20 years ago. Now, I still like the idea of jets because I hate being molested by the TSA, which has happened multiple times. But it's a time machine for me. It's how you have a different experience of life where you choose things versus saying, I'm stuck with this. Like, I'm very, you can probably notice the theme, self-responsible. If there's a problem, I'm going to fix it. I'm not going to just hope and wait and maybe somebody will do something. As much as I love Trump and the things that are being done, I'm not waiting for him to solve my life. I'm saying, this is a great tailwind. It's still up to me to go do something.
Yeah, I think you made a lot of great points there. And I feel like one of the biggest ones is, the idea of in real estate investing, and those in our audience that are primarily investing in, single family homes, apartments, or land. The best time to buy is always today or 10 years ago. Whoever is in office or whatever regulations are going on, there's always a way to make it work if you're structuring things right and acting in the right way, and you're focused, which is another important point that I kind of want to take out of the conversation, which you see 70 companies and, that's so many. And it feels like today, and now that you're older and wiser and have gray in your beard, you've kind of really consolidated your focus into one thing. Do you feel like, kind of related to the question I asked of, do you have to hit rock bottom to, come back up? Do you wish when you were in your, 20s and early 30s that you had kind of stayed in just one particular direction? Or do you think that breadth of experience was helpful or useful? Is it hindsight bias one way or the other? And what are you thinking?
It's a tough question, and it's a tough question because you change something. There was a movie called Mr. Destiny years ago, and it was about the one baseball. If this guy hit it, his whole life would change. He would have married the prom queen and like this whole thing. And yeah, if I had focused on one thing, I got thrown out of college, then I worked at a bank, then I started an insurance agency, then I did real estate, then I blew that up after I made, like, anything that you change over the last however many years would lead you to a different today. And would I be doing Frametech? No. If you changed anything, the chances it would have been one in a gazillion that I'd still be doing Frametech. I'd be doing something. If I was alive, I would be doing something. But I think the lesson, if I was going to go tell myself, the biggest lesson would be, don't worry about and don't even think about what other people think about you. That is a huge holdback. People are like, oh man, my parents, my friends, my neighbors, the real estate investing community, they're going to think I'm crazy. If you don't have people thinking you're crazy and you don't have haters online, you are not pushing hard enough. You are taking up too much space, man. You need to get off on that ledge, right? Like a little further. That was the biggest thing where I was so concerned about what people were thinking. And I spent a lot of time and energy instead of saying, this is what I want to do. Now, this is why you also have mentors, gray-haired or people that have had 10, 20, 30 years more experience of you. They don't have to be way older than you. They just need to have the actual experience. You have those people checking you and challenging you. They're not there to tell you you're crazy. Maybe they are. But their job isn't to stop you. It's to help you see around the corner. So you still keep doing the thing most people have people around them telling them, don't do this, don't do that, because they want them to be safe, because your friends and your family love you. Your mom doesn't want you to die. And she thinks if you lose money, you're going to die. And like, there's all this crap that we're dealing with. And that was one of the things that held me back or slowed me down, was all that thinking. I didn't have anybody other than Jim Rohn and Brian Tracy and Tony Robbins, rah, me. Those are my friends. Eventually I ended up talking to them face to face, but it was, for a long time, I just listened to them, but I still had people around me to a certain extent that were shitting on my parade. And that is a very dangerous place to be. And the sooner you can get rid of that, the sooner you free yourself to tap into your potential, where you're not getting in your own way because of the hesitation around, what are they going to think of me?
Yeah, that was well said. There's something you brought up that I really didn't want to skip past from a few minutes ago. You mentioned, to Mason's question about retirement, if you have a huge amount of money in the bank, you can work on projects that might take 5+ years to come to fruition. And I see this challenging dichotomy for a lot of people, especially people that are new to any business, where they need to make money next month. And so always being focused on that, they don't make any big picture progress. It's like the home wholesaler that never saves any money, so they're always just trying to survive, and then they never buy and keep anything for later in life, right? And they never invest anything that can grow and compound. And I've struggled with this to a degree where, I'm not living month to month, but some of the things I might want to work on can take years to come to fruition. And it's challenging to balance that with a day-to-day business that I have employees, I have overhead. And so how do you, looking back in the last few decades, all the businesses you've been in, what would you say to someone that's trying to balance the big picture, the 2, 3, 5, 10-year sort of endeavors with the day-to-day reality, if you're not very, very wealthy, of having to make money to cover overhead and living expenses?
One of the things that gets in everybody's way, and I say everybody, I'm talking the vast majority of human psychology, is the lifestyle creep. And we go, well, I just, I'm not living paycheck to paycheck, but it's like paycheck and a half, or like whatever. There's this narrow band. We don't have the ability to say, not only am I not going to get paid, but I've got money to pay in and invest in people and staff and overhead. So what does that mean? It means that most of us are setting ourselves up to fail because we want a lifestyle, and we're getting the lifestyle going before the actual business. You cannot build your lifestyle and your business simultaneous the way that you can build your business if you're focused on it. And people try to, we're comparing ourselves to all these people and all the glitz and the glamour and the money and the stuff. And look, I'm guilty of it too. I did a lot of that. And then there came a time about 5 years ago where I turned into a groundhog. I just went straight into the ground and built. And I didn't think about my lifestyle. It was a huge season of being out of whack. There was no balance in my life. People that are trying to get balance, they want to have the lifestyle. The reality is, if you were honest with yourself, you don't need what you do is you want a certain lifestyle. You want to live in a certain place. And people, I'm not saying go live in a shack. I'm saying that it's Parkinson's law. We continue to expand our expenses into our income. And then we go, I don't have enough money. Yeah, but like, I remember being 20 years old and working at this bank. I was making $2,000 a month, and I had all sorts of extra money every month. I had a roommate. I was the roommate. It was, my rent was like $300 or $200 a month or some dumb thing. And then it ended up being 100 times that down the road. But we have the ability, but we're not conscious of what we're doing. So we do have those choices so that you can create the opening. Because the reality is you could do something for 10 to 20 hours a week, and people are going to say, this isn't possible. And I can tell you that you're lying to yourself. You could do something 10 to 20 hours a week, make enough money to support your basic survival. You're like, how you don't die or starve to death or have rain on you when you're sleeping. You could do that, and then you have all this time. The problem is we end up spending so much time trying to keep up with our previous legacy choices with debts and everything else. And then we don't have any space left or any energy left. So you have to really check yourself. And one of the dumbest things I've ever done, when I blew up and I was out of money, I was working with a friend of mine on our financials. Every quarter we get together, and I was like, man, I got to figure out what to cut. I can't come up with anything else. He goes, your burn rate is $70,000 a month and you don't even have any money left. I go, but I can't cut anything. He goes, you are crazy. I was like, no. I've had this certain burn rate. These are important things. He's like, yeah, but reality is, dude, you can't turn off gravity, and it's going to suck you into the ground. You're jumping out of a plane without a parachute. And that we don't want to face reality. But when you do, it's really freeing, because you go, oh, all right, if I just stop, what's the worst thing that happens? What if I just change? Are they going to eat me? No, you do not live on the Saharan plains where some tiger is going to eat you. You're just going to have somebody calling you and yelling at you, not paying about your thing, or, a wife or a spouse or somebody that says, why do we have to live in a house half the size? It's like, because I'm chasing my dream and we're building something for the future. We tend to ignore the reality of what it takes. And that's why we get stuck in this perpetual loop where 10, 20 years goes by and it's like, man, I'm in the same place, bigger house, same place financially.
Yeah. I spent years renting out rooms in my house, living in just a bedroom, really working out of it. So I think that was well said.
Yeah, definitely agree. Damion, we're coming towards the end of our show, and a question we like to ask a lot of our guests is, what question should we have asked you that we did not ask you?
The big challenge, like as if there's one challenge in the world for everybody. Here's what I notice people doing. They're frozen trying to figure out what the right choice is. They go, I got so many options. I can chase land. I can chase apartments. I can build something. I can buy something. I don't know what to do. It doesn't matter. And people are like, what do you mean it doesn't matter? Like, it doesn't matter what you do if you do something, because you're going to leverage and learn from that. And how do you start that? My suggestion is you start that by going to somebody and you attach yourself to them and you become totally valuable to them and they can't say no to you. What most people do is they call somebody, if they have the balls to call somebody, and they'll say, hey, what can I do to help you? And man, you call me and ask me that. I'm like, I am busy. I don't have time to think about how you're going to solve my problems. I'm busy solving my problems. On the other hand, if somebody comes, they show up and all of a sudden they have solved some of my problems and they're doing it of their own volition, I go, who are you? And I need you in my life because you're exactly what I need. That's so picking. So two things, everybody should ask themselves, all right, does it matter what I pick? The answer is no. And I'll give you a hint. It doesn't matter. Pick something. And if you're wrong, if you go, I want to do a restaurant. Okay, great. Go do the restaurant. And then when it blows up, I've had a restaurant. It was terrible. I like restaurants to eat at. I hate owning them. But you go do the thing and then you learn from it. And nothing happens except you're smarter and you're stronger and you have instincts. You have emotional intelligence. And truly getting around people. And if you're like, I don't know how I'm going to get a hold of Elon Musk and attach myself to him. All right, try again. Do something, go to somebody else. And this is the great spaces, man. There's mentors, there's coaches, but go find somebody that's done the crap, not somebody that read a book. Go attach yourself. And if you go, well, they won't return my call. I promise people that are charging money as mentors will return your call. So this is where you invest in yourself. How do you hack life and not spend 10 years making all the dumb mistakes? You hire somebody to help you see around the corner so you can avoid 99% of them and make new creative mistakes. You're going to make mistakes, but do you have to make all the ones that everybody else makes? No. You can absolutely up your game and shave off decades of the experience and have better experiences. So that's what I would encourage everybody to do. Leverage off, 30 years, 70 plus companies creating a unicorn, boiling that down into 10 minutes. If you don't download this book and you're going to be like, this stuff is really basic and simple, good. Then take those principles and apply them to your life and say, what am I missing right now? Like, use that kind of stuff. If I said, read a 300-page book, you're not going to do it. But anybody that says, I don't have time to read 10 minutes worth of book, you are going to be broke and miserable the rest of your life because you're not making your life and your vision a priority.
No, I think that's great. And I think a few points I want to draw out of that where it's not hard to get in contact with people that have the experience that you want. But whenever you are seeking mentorship and you place all of the burden of being a mentor onto that person, people don't respond. For the three of us who were not famous or influential in any capacity, we probably get, 10 to 100 messages between the three of us every day saying, hey, can we grab coffee? Can I pick your brain about this, pick your brain about that? It's just frustrating and annoying. And I think another thing that you said with latching onto someone, it's okay to get a job. I feel like so many people are focused on being an entrepreneur and being a business owner and, not having people tell them what to do. And it's like, dude, you don't have any experience. You don't know what to do yet. It's okay to go get a job. It's okay to work for a big company and work a W-2 corporate job and gain a lot of experience and go off and do it on your own, or stay with the company and help grow it, or anything like that. It's just go do something. Stop talking about going and doing it. And Damion, I know you've put a lot of information out there. Where can people find out more about you, what you have going on, and what you have to offer?
I think the best thing to do is literally download that book, and it's going to narrow your focus and give you some things to think about. The intention behind doing that was people go, I want to pick your brain. To your point, they reach out. I'm like, have you read my 10-minute book? Well, no, I just wondered if we could have lunch. The answer is no. Go take this thing that I spent time boiling down and use those nuggets. So go to turnkeyretirement.com, get that thing. And then you know what? How do you reach out to me? You'll know how to reach out to me after you've done that. You'll go, oh, you know what? I learned this. I'm applying this. I have a question. You find me on LinkedIn or something. But start in one place. And the reason I don't give you 45 different places, I've done this where I give people 45 things and they're like, I don't know what to do first. The first thing you do is download a 10-minute thing that will help you hack your life and shave off a decade or two of all of the experiences that you would run into if you didn't have somebody giving you a little bit of insight into the future. So yeah, turnkeyretirement.com. Very simple. Download that thing. And then once you've done that, here's the last thing I'll say, that when you have mentors, the worst thing you can do for a mentor, anybody, whether you're buying their time or whether they're giving you their time for free, the worst thing you can do is squander their time. Meaning they say something and then you go, yeah, but I know better, or you don't do it. Guess how many times they're going to want to spend time with you again? Never. Because I love helping people, but I hate when they waste the time. I love when somebody goes, I heard this, I went and did this thing, even if it didn't work, or if they partly did it, I'm like, cool. I'm excited about you taking action. I feel like my life there's a fulfilling aspect of me participating in somebody else's growth. That's exciting. What I hate is somebody goes, cool, thanks for the information. I'm like, man, I can't get that 20 minutes back. That sucks.
Absolutely. And, to make it worth mentors' time, find out what they like and treat them to it. So if anyone's in Colorado Springs and wants to take me golfing, just let me know. But I'm just kidding. But Damion, it was an absolute pleasure having you on the show. We'll make sure to link all of that stuff in the show notes. And everybody, this is Mason McDonald and Dan Haberkos with the Big Picture Blueprint signing off.